Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Just Because Wrestling. We are joined with a very special guest this week. He is Mr. Speedball Mike Bailey. Mike, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you guys?
Good now, good. A little bit of a snowstorm happening in Ireland at the moment. So well, when we say storm, it's nothing to
Right?
what you get out in Canada. It's
No.
minor.
Luckily for the last couple of days it's been pretty good, but before that we had a pretty bad one. It is cold right now. It's -11.
Oh well, that's
So
not
that,
like that makes us look like pussies here, like because it's like two or three here, and the country shuts down. Like it's incredible compared to other countries. We're ridiculous.
We're kind of wimps compared to the very northern hemisphere. You know what I mean? We think we have it,
right.
and then you
But
look at
that's
Canada, or like if it snows a tiny bit here, we're calling off work and everything. We're the shops are shutting down. We're running out of bread. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
like
really
country goes to
every
anarchy.
that's every other country. I think like Canada and probably like Russia are the one that gets this much snow and are like, yeah, it's life, it happens. Like
just get
I
on
guess
with
it's
it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, Scandinavian countries as well, but everything else, like America completely shuts down as well. I remember one time being in England and there was like 2 inches of snow or whatever, and I was like, oh yeah, no problem. But then everything shut down. The roads, flights were canceled, shows couldn't happen because talent couldn't make it, and I was like, what are you guys doing? You'll be fine,
this is summer in Canada.
right?
But listen, it's great to have you on, Speedwall. There's a lot we want to get into, but before we start, I'd be remiss by mentioning we actually have a story that sort of involves you at a show we went to. You wrestled in our hometown about a year and a half ago. You wrestled Pac at
Yes,
Neptune Stadium, yeah, and we
remember
went to
that
that.
very
We were
well.
at that show, and we arrived late to the show because I was working, and of course the day you want to finish early in work ends up the day you finish late. Like so, I missed the start of the show, so we were rushing in, and like that where you wrestled is like 10 minutes from our house, so we kind of know the ins and outs. So we knew there was a back entrance, so we kind of drove in there. Little did we know, because we were like, "There's loads of spaces here." Little did we know that was like the wrestlers' entrance, or
Yeah.
like where the bus parks or whatever. So we literally pull into the car, and we we were rushing. We get out, and like you you and Pac are standing like literally 5 yards away from us. And like we could tell you're looking at us thinking that we're part of like the crew or something. We're just
Yeah.
fans, just like, oh, what do we do? And like we didn't want to come over because we knew you might be like discussing your match or whatever. We didn't want to be,
Mhm.
the marks coming in, being like interrupting you. So we literally get out of the car and just run out, scurry away from you.
So that's something that's like very very common and something I have to be like very aware of, especially like two ways that goes, right? I on a lot of shows as an independent wrestler, which I've been for a very long time, work for thousands of promotions. I'm gonna meet like every show I meet like at least 20 people that are not wrestlers, but that have a part in the crew and introduce themselves by names. I should know they have, even though it's not a wrestling role, it's always a perfectly valuable role. So I try as hard as I can to remember who they are, and I always feel bad. So every time I see someone that's like, I can't place the face, but they're where someone that's like, part of the show should be. And I'm like, oh, is that a person? Is that a fan? Do I need to tell them to leave and they can't be here to watch me plan my match? Or do I just go on? And that's always,
That-
but, and also with like how wrestling venues are, and you like sometimes they won't even have a backstage. You'll be
Yeah.
changing and then planning your match on the sidewalk behind the venue, and it's always a thing to realize, okay, I'm just going through the moves that I'm going to do in the ring with my guy, and it's like, oh, there's people watching, got to go over there. And many times Puck and I had to just move like behind that truck to try to go over stuff when there was people walking by.
Yeah.
So that's a surprisingly common thing.
yeah, that's the thing. Like Joe, we walked past and we were like, that's Pac, who's probably the angriest man in the history of Newcastle, and then you have and that's a lot of angry people in Newcastle. But like, and then you have yourself who could probably kick our souls out of our body. And we were like, all right, let's probably not go over there and interrupt them while they're doing something rather important. We'll probably find out what they're talking about in a couple of minutes anyway when they wrestle. But another follow-up to that story, actually, I was flying to Portugal the next day, and I had to drive into the city centre to get just buy some stuff for the next day, you know. And I was driving, literally, I was coming down the hill from my house, and I turned and I was going onto the main road. And this bus, I stopped at the red light, and this bus pulls out in front of me. And I remember I just glanced. I wasn't even paying fully attention. I literally just glanced up, and I was like, I swear to God, that looked like Pac in the back of that bus. And I remember being like, that's definitely the wrestler's bus. And I remember I just followed, I forgot what I was doing. I just followed the bus like some demented stalker. I was following the bus, and it went all the way to Neptune. And I remember just being like, all right, so it's definitely the bus. So, and I remember thinking, oh, this will be cool because it'll be only me. I'll get a sneak peek at all the wrestlers coming off the bus. And it was literally, I'm not even joking, there was like a crowd outside Neptune already waiting. And like there was, you know, yourself, Pac, I'm trying to think other people, the Rascals, they all of them came off the bus. And like I was just like, that was funny. They're all up in my house. I was like, it was just so weird because I just remember just looking up and seeing Pac in his street attire and thinking, that's so weird. He doesn't travel everywhere in full gear. I fully expected him to be in full gear everywhere he went.
So that's a weird one because just by the way, OTT is they're used to having us stay at the same hotel in Dublin, which is by the airport, and flights to Dublin are the cheapest way to get there. So like it's a very, very rare occasion in Europe that there's going to be a bus that takes us from one place to the next. Usually you get there by yourself. So like at least I'm glad that this time when you were there, we actually got to look like superstars in a tour bus or whatever, instead of me just taking an Uber from the bus station to the venue, or people coming in like 5 people in a tiny car just throwing out suitcases like a clown car. But yeah.
But as you can tell, like our hometown doesn't get much events happening here anyway. So like
Right.
hence why Billy decided appropriate to chase your bus down from his house.
But
That's the
so
thing.
there is like quite a bit of wrestling in Cork, isn't there? Like in Ireland, that would be like the second biggest place for wrestling because I
It's
know
the
there's a
second biggest,
promotion.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there would be Phoenix Wrestling, which would be like kind of the local promotion in Cork kind of thing. It's
Yes.
that would get the majority of wrestling shows in Cork would be Phoenix. Like the show you wrestle on was the first to be in Cork from OTT.
Right.
But yeah, I know Phoenix is kind of the main one in Munster. Like they would run primarily Cork, Waterford. I think just maybe Limerick. I think they've done a few shows as well.
Right.
But
I'm pretty sure OTT were planning to do more in Cork and would have if that were possible.
And fingers crossed, hopefully at some stage we'll get back to that. But just on Phoenix Wrestling, we had one of their wrestlers last week on Butch Armstrong, and he said in the interview with him that you were a big influence in his career, that he went over to Canada and like got to kind of train and wrestle, and you were a big influence in critiquing his matches and giving him advice. And like what I want to know is, in a guy who's relatively young yourself, like you're still just 30, is it 30 or 31?
Yeah, I'm 30.
30. So like for a guy like that, you know, it's rare that you get a guy that young and people are saying, oh, he influenced my career. How does that feel? Is that strange to you, or?
Well, no, it's not. Like, I mean, from an like inside perspective, I know that it's unusual, and I know that I'm very like I very much have a mind for teaching, and it's something I like to do, and I'm focused on. And when I started wrestling, I was more than my peers focused on breaking things down and the how and the why. Like there's a lot of very, very successful wrestlers that are very good, better than me, that can explain uh less well than me why what they do works than I can, right?
Yeah.
So like being good at wrestling is a good thing, but in order to teach it, you have to be able to explain it. And I started Taekwondo when I was very young, like 11. I got my black belt relatively fast, and I started teaching Taekwondo, just giving classes when I was relatively young. So I started teaching very early on. And so like when I started wrestling, I had already been teaching Taekwondo for a few years. So I kind of brought that mentality. And I've always looked at teaching as like more than just being good at something and transferring that knowledge as an art in itself that I definitely wanted to get better at, looking forward to one day when I won't be able to wrestle and I'll be focused on coaching full time. I don't want that to be the time where I learn to become a good teacher and coach. I want to start learning now and be great at it when I need to do only that.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. You bring up, because that was the thing I wanted to talk to you as well about, the fact that like you obviously have a very prominent martial arts background in your style of wrestling, and you know that's why when I first saw you wrestle, I don't know if you can remember the match, but the first match I ever saw you in was during the Canadian leg of the WCPW World Cup, and you wrestled Brent Banks.
Yes.
And yeah, I remember seeing that match, and I was blown away by the two of you. I mean, like, he absolutely tore the house down. And I remember just your style, because I've been training in some form of martial arts since I was 5 years old.
Awesome.
You know, I started in karate, and then, you know, I got my black belt then fairly young as well. And, you know, I progressed into kind of jiu-jitsu and MMA after that.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, so I've always kind of appreciated, you know, wrestlers who bring a martial arts background into their style, like yourself. And it was it's just, I feel like it brings, you know, I don't want it to sound kind of condescending to other forms of wrestling, but a level of legitimacy to your wrestling, if you get me. Like, obviously other styles of wrestling are legitimate as well, but I'm just saying, like, when you're actually, you can see that you're throwing your kicks properly, you can see that you're throwing your strikes properly. It really impacts the match. And I was wondering, do you think that like more wrestlers should like train a bit more martial arts to kind of enhance their in-ring perspective? Or
So no, I don't think that's the solution to the problem you're describing. And I like, this is something that I was talking about with a student of mine yesterday as well. Hammers and nails, right? We all know that analogy to a hammer, everything is a nail. And you see that a lot on Twitter, people saying like, people who are very good at technical wrestling going, oh, the reason the wrestling industry is going under is because people aren't good at technical wrestling, which, true, it would help. Yes, I think every wrestler would benefit from some sort of martial arts training. However, the reason wrestling is so much fun to watch and the reason it's such a fun sport to practice is because it's so multifaceted, which is also what makes it so difficult, right? To be a good wrestler, you need to be a good striker. You need to be a good grappler. You need to be a good storyteller. You need to be a good actor. You need to be charismatic. You need to be funny. You need to be, you need to be able to convey stories and write that. And you need to have a good memory. And there's so many facets. And I think that, speaking like philosophically about pro wrestling, the mistake people make is thinking that fixing one of those aspects for everyone would improve it. Where really it's more about people need to focus on their strengths, right? And if martial arts is not a thing that you're good at and you've been wrestling for 5 years already and you're like 25, then maybe martial arts is not your thing and you have another strength that you should focus on instead, right? So I know that when I started getting good at wrestling was when a few years in, I was like, I'm not as good at like all the pro wrestling stuff, the classic elbow drops and body slams and tackle drop down leapfrog kind of pro wrestling. I'm great at taekwondo though. I'm super good at that. And I'm also good at like flips and the athletic stuff. So I'm going to lean heavily into that.
Yeah.
And that's really what set me apart. And by getting better at those strengths, then eventually I got to get good at other things. And the mistake people I think make a lot that hurt their matches very often is to want to prove themselves by compensating in another way, right? Like a young me, and it's something I see in other people quite a lot. They say like, I'm a good striker. I'm wrestling a guy that's a grappler. Okay, so I'll show them that I can grapple as well. Well, that's the wrong way to go about it, right? Yeah. The proper way to go about it is I'm gonna let them do all of the grappling, and the story that I'm gonna tell in the match is that they're great at grappling, but I have the striking, and we're gonna illustrate that contrast. So I think that if someone is good at martial arts, then yes, they should lean heavily into that, and they should use that for the contrast. Or when they fight someone else that does martial arts, then it gives something beautiful because they'll mix it. But I think like when someone's wrestling me, I'd rather them stay away from what I do and do what they're good at. Like even if it's like they're boxers and they're punching, then they get the punches, I get the kicks. We can still do something nice with that. But I think like when wrestling becomes homogenous, like if there's one style that everyone does, it's not very interesting.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to see all the different styles, and I love it. I'm a big fan of it when wrestlers do MMA and can bring like realistic martial arts to wrestling. And I know that a lot of people are as well, and there's a big trend going for that as well. But I know like you won't wrestling is not going to gain as many fans as it should if it becomes that homogeneously. I think if you want to do that, if you want to be a martial arts guy, you should be great at it. You should lean into it. You should go for it 100%. But if you're not, find something else that's your own strength and focus on that.
Yeah. Styles make matchups, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you say that. It's kind of like the ECW philosophy where like Paul Heyman was always regarded as like a lord of hiding people's weaknesses and accentuating their positives, and that's kind of what you're kind of saying. Someone like the Sandman was never great in the ring, but they limited to what he could do in the ring, and stuck to what he was good at. And like it's interesting that you're it's kind of the same philosophy now, but it's wrestling styles more so than whether you're just good at like wrestling or not or whatever. It's evolved that way.
Right. So the reason I think like that Paul Heyman thing is a little bit difficult is because like most people now TV was the thing for wrestling, right? You wanted to be a wrestler, you would go on TV and you were either an independent wrestler or you went straight to TV and that's the thing. But now everyone spends, 10 years being an independent wrestler before they make it everywhere. And you don't, as an independent wrestler, you rarely get storylines, you rarely get a promo, you rarely get any more input on your match than, hey, you have 10 minutes there on the show and you win and that's that. So you have to be good in that scenario. So it's a lot less like you couldn't hide someone like the Sandman and just have them do a big entrance and have that be their whole shtick in independent wrestling. You can on TV. But I think that's something wrestling schools do wrong a lot is try to have this is the school, this is the curriculum, and everyone has to get super good at that curriculum before they can have a wrestling match. Whereas a lot of wrestlers will do terrible in training. And I know because I've seen them, and a lot of the great wrestlers that you see or have the most entertaining matches, like you would watch them go to the classic training curriculum and be like, oh, what are they doing? But then they'll go and they'll have a completely different strength. And in their match, they'll like have the biggest personality in the world, and that's going to make them awesome and stand out. And you wouldn't have known other than let them be themselves in a ring.
Yeah. I suppose another question that kind of interests me, and this is kind of a strange one, but it's one that kind of like it's something that always stuck in my head, right? Seeing yourself wrestle, seeing the likes of kind of Matt Riddle wrestle, the likes of Rusev wrestle. I suppose you might know what I'm leading to already.
Yeah,
the bare feet.
The
bare feet. How does that? Because I know, like I said, I've done martial arts my whole life. I spend a lot of time in my bare feet and stuff. I know that like after a while your feet get all callousy and stuff. But like, do you find yourself like when you take a bump out, like say from the ring to the floor, do you think that like are you feeling it more on your feet? Do you think you're more prone to injury because you don't have boots on, or do you think that it helps you more because you're used to wearing those shoes your whole life or your whole martial arts life?
So yes and no, but I mean you nailed it. That's why I don't wear shoes because it's a lot more comfortable, and that's how I'm used to training. That's how I learned to move around first. But yes and no. I mean, like if I'm jumping from the top rope to the outside, yes, I'm more likely to hurt my heels on the landing. However, kicking and pointing my toes becomes so much more comfortable when I'm not wearing shoes, as well as a lot of the jumps and stuff where I can fully extend my foot. That becomes a lot more comfortable. So I mean, there's pros and cons there. I've tried shoes, I've tried boots, I've tried barefoot. I prefer barefoot. And I think the issue becomes when you just accept wrestling dogma and be like, no, wrestlers wear boots, gotta wear boots, instead of just going, no, I'm more comfortable barefoot. So I know I've heard why you shouldn't wrestle barefoot, but it works better for me, and I know, and I found that out.
And
Yeah.
interesting that way because like you said, wrestling, you know, can be very traditional, and people, you know, traditionally wear boots and stuff. So you don't, like, obviously we're not asking you to name names or anything, but did you receive any backlash from kind of more veterans, people like veterans in the locker room telling you, you know, you should wear boots, this is why? Or
Yeah, so yeah, and if I name names, it would not be people you know. It would be like people that wrestled in Quebec and have stopped 10 years ago.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, people are going to do that. Like again, people are going to try to people that have been doing the same thing without questioning it for the long time are going to, you know, give you the same logic that they heard even though it's wrong. But like if you're going to be defiant like that, you have to back it up. And
yep,
if I was wrestling in the exact same way they did, but decided, no, I'm going to not wear boots or do this one thing different without being able to explain why and go out there and show why uh, my thing is different, why, be it I do a different movement or I do things differently and why it works for me, or just I don't wear boots and this is why it works for me. And then I can go out there, back it up and show it. I think that's the important part. And that's why it's never bothered me. Because like with a black belt comes a lot of confidence in yourself, right? You sort of it's a good argument when
yeah,
someone argues, no, you shouldn't kick this way, you should kick this way. I have something like I have a few gold medals here to prove that I know a thing or two about kicking, so it becomes a lot easier to back up.
yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was so obviously you were banned from working in the US for 5 years in 2016. So you took that and decided, like, you were working a lot in the European circuit, and like I think you've become kind of like an adopted son of Europe, where you're seen more as a European wrestler now than you ever were in kind of in the US, and like, which is kind of good because a lot of European fans kind of remain loyal to the European wrestlers. So like you're kind of our honorary adopted son, basically. But one thing I wanted to ask was, like, what's the difference for you between working in the US and Europe that you've had in the last 5 years?
So like there isn't really an inherent difference. Like I feel like the UK and the US and even Canada, aside from like geography, are relatively the same. People are familiar with the same wrestling and the same styles of wrestling. Crowds react mostly the same way. I mean, what affects like an area the most in terms of what wrestling fans want is what happens on TV. Like a lot of people decide to go to wrestling shows because they've seen it on TV. And in the UK and in the US and everywhere in the, you know, Western world, they've seen WCW and WF and then WWE and Impact and all of that, and that's what makes them wants to go to wrestling shows. And then promoters have to build off those expectations when they're doing shows. So UK, US, mostly the same. Like, of course, there's a lot of geographical differences. Mostly Canada is different. UK, everything is very close,
Yep.
except when you're going to go further out, like Ireland and Scotland, and it's a little bit more spread out, but it's still not nearly as spread out as Canada, where like Montreal and Toronto are a 6-hour drive apart, and those are the two closest like major cities.
Yep.
But if you want to go like what's different, like Mexico and Japan, the culture of pro wrestling there is completely different. They have different wrestling on TV that they pay attention to. So the fans have different expectations and a completely different way of reacting to pro wrestling. And that has to affect how you wrestle as well.
Yeah, because like it's interesting you bring up Japan as well, because like I've always thought, and I keep bringing it back to your style, but it's just because I'm such a fan of your style of wrestling, and just, you know, the way you work in the ring. Like I always thought, you know, like you would work exceptionally well in Japan, and with you know, with a strong style match, like, you know what I mean, like with guys, you know, when you think of guys like, you know, Nakamura, guys like Hiroki Goto, you know, the guys like Kazuchika Shibata, Suzuki, these guys who like bring in that kind of hard hitting style into their matches as well. Have you looked at Japan as kind of like, you know, would it ever be a possible permanent home for you, or is it something that you want to be more kind of an independent wrestler and focus along, you know, travel more, focus on all the other cultures before you decide to ever settle?
So I mean, I've been wrestling for DDT in Japan for the past 4 years on and off. I go there and I stay like a month at a time, which is ideal for me. Like,
Yeah.
in the last 5 years, my main goal has been to build up an international name for myself. So
Yeah,
I didn't want to stay in one place, right? As much as I love Japan, and it's probably my favorite place to wrestle, I didn't want to spend all of my time there and become forgotten by the rest of the world. I think the best thing that I could do for myself and have been doing is just try to go around as much as possible and go to where like wrestling is the most relevant. And in the last several years, like Europe has exploded, and that's been a great place to get a lot of eyes on my matches. So, like, as
yeah,
much as I love Japan, and if I wasn't looking ahead to the future, I probably would have liked to stay with DDT full time and do that. And also, uh, my partner Veda Scott, who's also a wrestler, she's
Yep.
American. I can't go to America, so we've traveled around together. Uh, the opportunities aren't always the same for her as they are for me. So a lot of the scheduling has been like to suit us both, and wherever made more sense
yeah,
for us to be at the same place at the same time, that's where we went.
Yeah.
But balancing all those things is what really made my decision.
yeah. That's fair, and like that's completely understandable as well because like obviously, like you said earlier, like once upon a time in wrestling, like the main focus was getting on TV and
Yeah.
just getting on a televised show. Whereas now, it's more about honing your craft and kind of
Yes.
building a reputation for yourself. That when you do ever decide to sign for a particular company, you have the name behind you that will promise you a prominent spot on that television show. You know what I mean? Like if you can back up, if you have a resume, a mile long with matches with classic match after classic match and different styles, different stipulations, different opponents, and different audiences. Obviously it'll translate better for you for whoever when you do eventually decide to make a permanent home for yourself. If that's because obviously some people don't want to do that. Some people want to obviously be an independent. They find it's more freedom, more independence. Literally as an independent wrestler. And like I mean like I think you definitely have. That's definitely the right attitude. I would agree with you totally. Anyway, that like you probably should kind of sample kind of every style before
Exactly.
Yeah,
Uh, when I was wrestling in the US, more than 5 years ago, it seemed like my career was heading in like the classic direction where I would hopefully get picked up by some company in America.
Yeah.
Uh, and then that didn't happen, so I had to, completely change my path and start getting known internationally. And that allowed me to figure out so many things and that I wanted to do and look at, wrestling internationally as a lot more of a possibility as a like full-time long-term project rather than just picking up a contract and settling for that. And then also things like teaching, and I've learned so much from different places, and like I think my teaching becomes so much more valuable, which is what I'm looking at in the very, very long term now that I can bring in experience and the best from all the countries I've traveled to.
yeah, definitely, yeah. And like I just want to talk as well about because you talked about Europe exploding on the wrestling scene as well. And obviously one hotbed for that has been Germany with WXW. And I just have to talk about that match with Bandito from last year, from 16 karat gold. That match was absolute insanity. And like obviously, Bandito is a guy, that guy is just he's not human, I'm convinced. Like he I don't know what's under that mask, but it's not a person. And like I'm pretty sure he's only like 24 or something as well. Like he's also like stupidly young. And like you and him went out there and tore the house down, got like just went mint online, like everyone was talking about it on Twitter and whatever. And like how does that feel to you when you go out there and you put your absolute heart and soul into a match and you get such a positive reaction? Like the crowd's going mental. Obviously, like the Oberhausen crowd is such a raucous crowd anyway. And then like you get that reaction, and then you throw on Twitter, you log on to Twitter and you get like these reams of tweets that are saying like Speedball Bailey and and Bandito just absolutely tore the house down, like, and stole 16 karat gold. Like, how does that, like, that surely must be the most rewarding thing for you as a wrestler.
It is like wrestling occupies my mind 24/7, and I'm always watching and I'm always thinking of ideas. I'm always like filming clips of things that I see and want to try, and I'm always like writing down ideas for structures and spots and moves and things I want to do. And like even in normal times when I'm wrestling like every weekend 2 or 3 times, whenever I'm not wrestling and I spend those 4 days, it's like hard because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, man, I want to do these things because I know they're cool. And then when you finally get to do it, it's great. And then when you get to wrestle someone like Bandito that is just so good and helps you put out in the ring exactly what is in your mind, and you can see it one way, and then it happens exactly like that, and then see that people caught on to everything you tried to project, that is absolutely the most rewarding. Because wrestling, like, there's often a lot of obstacles, right? The main one being time, and then like time constraints, like you can't have every match can't be 30 minutes also. You never have like 7 days to plan your match. If I could spend 7 days in the ring with someone in order to slowly build our whatever 15-minute match, then in theory it'd be a lot better. And then like fatigue and your opponent's limitations, right? That's always a thing. Everyone has some form of limitation. For someone like Bandito, it's barely any, but it gets to more, and it gets to different strength, and it gets to working together and figuring out how it works. But when you like get to perform in a way that all those obstacles do not matter at all, and it looks exactly like you wanted it to, and you just feel good. This is like, there's a big ego thing with it, right? I feel it happens a lot with fighting. Like, you feel like, okay, I know I'm good, I know I can fight. It's just this guy is not letting me.
Yeah.
But with wrestling, it's different because you're both working towards the same goal, and when you do get to it, then yes, that is the most like validating, best thing in the world. Because if you're a wrestler and you're trying hard, you should know you're good. You should be like, I'm great, and I just want to show it. And then like,
No, that's cool, man.
And just like you talked about Bandito, and you've wrestled like mainly the best wrestlers in the world right now at this point, like name a top star in any promotion, and you've probably wrestled them. Well, what I want to know is, there anyone in wrestling currently that you haven't got the opportunity to wrestle that you'd love to get in the ring with someday?
Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Why not?
Right?
I love to see that match.
Yeah.
That'd be sick.
I mean, if there's one match that if I get to do means I've made it, it's that one. So yeah, definitely love to go with Roman Reigns.
Good answer. And it'd be an interesting one stylistically as well, because like especially with what Roman's doing right now with his character with Paul Heyman, I think there's a lot that could be done with your character and that dynamic. So it's interesting that you said that.
Yeah, I'd kill. I mean, counter a spear with a double shooting star knee drop. I mean, like, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have the whole match in my head. I'm good to go now.
And is that a thing? And I'm always interested and fascinated by that. Is that a thing? Like, we talk to some wrestlers and they say they find it difficult, especially now during the pandemic when you can't really wrestle. They find it difficult to actually watch wrestling because the switch kind of gets turned on, and like you're eager to get out there and you can't at the moment. But is that a thing where you watch matches and you're constantly saying, I could do something with that, or I could do something with him, or stuff like that? Is that switch constantly on for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I couldn't turn it off no matter how hard I tried. It's weird because now it's more of a passive exercise, but me more than many other wrestlers, I will plan like weeks in advance, and then I will have like my next 6 matches lined up in my head and the structure, and be good to go, and be going over them when I close my eyes before I sleep, just running through what the match could be and what it could look like. though I know I'm not alone. Like, there's a lot of people like this. I know when you wrestle guys that are like structurally and like psychologically and logically very, very good at wrestling, making the match almost becomes like mathematical. Like, there's very little room for discussion, and it's like, okay, you do this here, I do that here, so we do this. You do this move, I do that move. This is the counter, and then for the end, this, and that. And like sometimes the longest, most complicated matches actually end up being very, very, very simple. Like that match with Bandito that was long and seemingly very complex was very, very easy to put together because we both have a very specific move set. We have very specific strengths. We have very specific things that we do that, especially during the course of that tournament, the audience got familiar with. So there's no having to explain why this is important. We both know what's going to work and what's not. So we kind of just put it together and go, you do this, then I do that. Easy. And then like wrestling always being a matter of time, that allows us to, whatever extra time we have, spend on picking 3 or 4 parts that we're going to like work at when everything else is just stuff that we know works. And that's what's going to allow us to really make those unique.
Yeah.
Just like going back off the Butch Armstrong interview last week, and how he was saying that you influenced him and you seem to have a hand in influencing a lot of careers. Who do you see and who do you like interact with on shows that you think have it and are going to be kind of like the next star that we mightn't even really know about at the moment?
Oh man, that's such a hard question.
I'm sorry, I had to ask it.
So no, I feel bad answering this because I know I'm gonna forget a bunch of people, and there's like way too many out there. Like just off the top of my head, so Butch, the when he participated in it was a 3-day long training camp that ultimately led to a match between him and a guy called Carl Jepsen, who wrestles in Quebec and was starting to have very good matches. He and I had our first singles together in like February of last year, so right before everything shut down. It's just Carl Jepsen, and he's in Quebec, and I think he's going to be great.
Butch actually mentioned that match last week as well. He talked about that match and how much he enjoyed it, and he actually mentioned Carl Jepsen as a guy for the future. So that's 2 in a row for you, Carl. If you're listening, you have a streak now of 2. You have a Goldberg-esque streak that you're starting, where people are calling you the next big thing. So no pressure, Carl. And in terms of like you worked a lot with OTT. Is there anyone in the Irish wrestling scene that like a lot of our listeners are fans of the Irish wrestling scene? Do you see people in OTT making it like big? Same question basically, just for OTT.
I mean, yeah, but you know. I'm not gonna say that like MTH. I think they're doing great and they're gonna be big, because I wish I could have said it like 2.5 years ago before they just went and did. If not, I like Callum Black is doing great and did great, and he's kind of lower there on the. I have a lot of faith in Clayton Long. Bright future there. Again, great background, so I don't see anything getting in his way. But yeah, again, so many people.
Interesting.
Like that's the thing as well, you know, like the Irish scene is kind of it's starting. Like we talked about last week, how it's starting. It's like a leaky faucet, and then someone's just going to turn on the tap and it's going to start flowing. And like, you know, there's going to be an explosion of Irish wrestlers over the next couple of years probably. And you know, I think the Irish scene, like, you know, you obviously in the world of wrestling, you have America, Canada, Mexico, Japan, the UK. I think Ireland's going to be kind of one of those places now where you're like, that's a hotbed now for professional wrestling, and hopefully, I mean, it'll be better for us anyway. But
the funniest thing I've noticed from wrestling internationally is how much wrestling is just cyclical and it's all the same everywhere else. Like, I've seen this scenario so many times, right? Where like it's happening right now in Portugal, it's happening in Scandinavia, it's happening in Singapore, it happened in New Zealand recently. It's a few steps further past in Italy, and it just everywhere in the world, it just keeps going like this, where a wrestling place will have just one promotion, one random promotion starts up, gets some sort of success, then a second promotion, like a person splits up in that first one, builds up a second promotion, then they feud with each other with two promotions that are mad at each other, and no one grows for that until one of the two, someone breaks out, allies themselves with one of the third promotions, then two of them start working together and they grow, and then other smaller promotions spring up from that, and then you have a scene, and eventually in that scene, one promotion becomes like a door. And wrestling for that promotion allows wrestlers from that scene to get visibility elsewhere, and that's what then gets attention on the scene. So here in Quebec, which is the French part of Canada, which is kind of like geographically, everything is far in Canada, so exchange of talents become a little bit difficult. Wrestling was super big in the 80s here, like I'm sure it was in Ireland, like it was all around the world. And then pretty much nothing until social media came along, and then there was a possibility to advertise independent wrestling shows, like other than just stapling the poster to telephone poles, right? So here it was, in fact, in like 2006 or so, one promotion up in Quebec City had the brilliant idea of booking Steve Corino against this young kid from Quebec who was having good matches called Kevin Steen, who's now Kevin Owens. And they brought like Steve Corino, and then they brought like Christopher Daniels, and he brought AJ Styles all to fight him. And then because of that, like he started, like he got offers to come to America, and then El Generico came along with him, who's now Sami Zayn, and then guys like Sexy Eddie, and then that kind of bridged the gap, and it opened the door, and it got like slowly, and then the more Kevin Steen got like notoriety in Quebec, the more the people who he would wrestle would then get recognized elsewhere, which is what happened with me at a promotion in Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada, and it's 2-hour drive away from Montreal or something. Kevin and I had a bunch of matches, and that's what really got my foot in the door for bigger promotions in America and got a lot of eyes on me. And I think in Ireland, OTT was doing a great job of that, where it was like the wrestlers that were doing good in the rest of Ireland got a shot with OTT, and if they do good in OTT, then they get to wrestle someone that's popular in England, and that person says, "Hey, come wrestle. Let's have this match again at my home promotion in Leeds or London or wherever," and that kind of bridges the gap. And sometimes that's really all it takes. And I feel like with Ireland and OTT, like that was happening, and it was just going to keep happening more and more. Like the more top-notch talent that was churned out by Ireland, the more they were just going to ship out and keep that rotation going. It's a shame that it's come to a halt now, but it'll start up again. I'm not worried.
Hopefully, anyway, because I'm going insane with the lack of wrestling shows that I in the last year. I'd imagine you must be the same for someone who's actually wrestling on the shows. Must be going insane. But off that, like how, because we hear as fans a lot like that there's a big difference between being like in good cardio shape and being in good in-ring shape. How do you, is there a way you can kind of replicate that in the middle of a pandemic and try and stay in ring shape, or is it difficult?
No, you absolutely cannot, because and here's something I know is true about fighting, and I know it's true about fighting because a much wiser man in one George St. Pierre said it, and not me, where that cardio, and this applies to wrestling probably more so than martial arts because you have even more room, but cardio for fighting is irrelevant when compared to pacing and technique. Right?
Yeah.
So I always say for pro wrestling, like your cardio, and if you're a sprinter, it's not going to help you much unless you can remain calm, take your breaks when you need, and like are able to stay relaxed. Like staying relaxed, the same thing. I'm sure you've done some boxing, right, Billy?
Yeah.
So it's a boxing stereotype of the like, I don't know if it's but I'm sure it's old Irish guys, but here it's like old Cuban or Puerto Rican guys, or guys who come from a country there's a lot of boxing where he'll just go like this. There was one at the boxing gym where I worked out. He was like a late 40s Cuban guy who could just go in the ring and he would just like spar nonstop for like 30 rounds, and you would have young guys come in there with him, do 3 rounds, and then get blown up, and he'd go like, okay, next, and he'd just keep going. Because think about it, if you're boxing and then every time a punch comes at your face, you go
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
flinch like that, you waste energy every single time. But if you're just this guy who's been punching his face all his life and you're just completely relaxed, staring head on and moving around and breathing like
Yeah.
without even changing it, then you can go forever. Wrestling is the same if you're constantly just flexing and not taking time to breathe and not taking breaks and not pacing yourself and not taking time to sell and using that selling as a break and then going back in, you're going to get tired. So, like, and that's a muscle that needs to be worked constantly. And I think, like, there's a very, very, like, there's a low ceiling for there's a low level where your cardio like needs to be, and then if your cardio is decent, you're okay for wrestling, and then that's when pacing comes in, and pacing is difficult and can only be learned through having a match that's as long as you need.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like there, like that. Now there was a guy in the gym where an old gym I used to train in. I never knew his name. Never ever found out his name. But we always called him the Machine.
Yeah.
And he was this guy. He wouldn't talk. He wouldn't talk to anyone. He wouldn't interact with anyone. He would literally be off in the corner with a heavy bag and a skipping rope. And he would literally he would do 10, 12 rounds in the bag, then 10, 12 rounds with the rope, and then every so often the boxing coach at the time, he would bring him in for sparring. He would spar us. And I remember at the time I was about 16, I'd say, and I sparred him. And I was handy enough as it was, I mean, I was like, I was confident, like I was confident going in there, right? So he's there anyway, we're sparring, and I throw a few kind of confident jabs, and that's fine, whatever. And like I'm starting to kind of go, Jesus, this is going on forever. Like he's kind of not doing. Is he just letting me tee off? Like is he just letting me wear my? And literally, exactly what he was letting me just waste my energy because he knew I wasn't going to hurt him. He knew I wasn't going to do anything to him.
The old Homer Simpson.
I was just about to say it's the scene in The Simpsons where he tips him over.
He hits me with the flushest one too. And I remember going down. I am right. Next thing I know, I was on the floor. And I just looked up. I wasn't out, but I remember just being on the floor, being like, I was standing 2 seconds ago. And like that guy, I never saw him tired. That guy could literally go, I don't know what he's doing now. I don't know where he is in the world.
He's probably skipping or hitting the bag.
He's probably still in that gym.
Talking about famous last words. Oh, is this guy going light and letting me win?
Yeah.
Literally, I was like, is this guy just feeling bad for me because I'm just this kid in the ring with him? Like, and the next thing he was just like, nah, sorry, and then just
Waiting for
went,
his shot.
nah, I'm bored of you now. Yeah.
Next. But speaking of next, what I want to know is your band in the US is up this year. Am I right?
Yes.
It's up in 2021. So is there, obviously with the pandemic and stuff, it's kind of unpredictable at the moment. But when crowds go back, are you excited about the prospect of getting to wrestle in the US once again? Or has the international scene kind of pulled you in that direction where you're kind of thinking more internationally?
It's hard to get excited because there's still like a lot of hurdles between me and being able to perform freely in the United States. But I'm just excited to wrestle again. And I have a ton of ideas that I've come up with, and I'm just waiting to be legally able to execute them before I start again.
Yeah.
But I'm flexible. That's how I've always been with my career, and it's been a pretty successful method to not have any like strict plans or goals and just feel out what works best for me and follow along with that. And if that's the US, then okay. If that's international bookings, then I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we've rambled on and kept you for long enough. So, Billy, is there anything on your end you want to ask? Do you have any more questions?
No, absolutely nothing really. Just, I think I've covered everything. All I want to say is, Jack said at the start when I was having technical difficulties, so I didn't get the chance, but absolute honor to have you on. Mike, it was just a pleasure to talk to you. You're an incredible mind. You're obviously a very intelligent guy, and it was great to pick your brain about the business and stuff. And, I can't wait to see you wrestle again. Like I said, your style, it hits home with me. It's something like, what it is when I see you wrestle. I mean, obviously not the shooting star presses and the backflips off balconies and stuff, but when you throw like a nice flush round hooks kick to someone's chest, I'm like, I could do that. I could be that guy. If I tried hard enough, I could be that guy. But so I suppose that's what it is. But so I can't wait to see you wrestle again, wherever that may be, whether that's stateside or if it's back here in Ireland, who knows? But yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Now-
It's been lovely to talk to you guys. I want to say before, like, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate you guys emailing me. Like, I don't remember who wrote the initial email,
It was
but
Billy.
it was Billy. Yeah, you were really like, maybe you want to be on our podcast. We thought we'd
Yeah,
give it a
I was
shot.
like,
Why
I don't know.
not?
I was like,
But I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and I feel like I get a lot more out of doing podcasts like this, where like I know that smaller podcasts usually have a lot of, like, you have a much smaller audience and a lot
Yep.
less viewers, but they're gonna be like a lot more invested, and I feel like people are appreciative that I took the time to have a conversation with you guys here, and like if I feel like if I do bigger podcasts and people just don't care, they'll listen to this and move on to the next one. But I feel like this one, people are going to actually really listen to what I have to say, and it's a bigger opportunity to make a connection than being on
Yeah.
a bigger, dry platform where I'm just one of many.
Yeah, because like
So-
anyone who's going to take the time to listen to us, you have to be a really hardcore wrestling fan. So
Right.
I do get that philosophy
But
because
that's who I want to speak to. I want to
Yeah.
speak to wrestling fans. I want to speak to people all around the world. I want to hear you guys' opinion and what you're into, and same thing, I want to hear from your fans what they like and don't like, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we appreciate it. If you stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes or so, we're going to go through NXT Takeover on Sunday. If you'd like to stick around for that,
Yeah, let's
we'd
do
love
it.
to hear your thoughts. So Billy, do you want to start on it there? I'll try and get up the card.
Yeah, I have the card anyway.
You have
Here,
the card.
so,
You're much
yeah.
more professional than I am. But
see, I knew this would happen. But anyway, so yeah, kicking off the card. So obviously this Sunday we have NXT Takeover. What's it called? Vengeance Day. Yeah, spooky name. But what's it called? We've got the first match. So we've got two big tag team matches obviously kicking off the card. The first is the final of the Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, the inaugural Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. It is the team of Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai taking on the team of Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart. And William Regal confirmed this week on NXT that the winners will get a shot at the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. So, guys, who's going first? Who you got? Who's got winner?
I'll go. I've got Ember Moon and Shotzi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like they've been Raquel's been doing really well individually, and I feel like they're going to be more focused on that. But I feel like Ember and Shotzi as a tag team have been working super well, and I feel like them versus Shayna and Nia would be really good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the direction they're going to go with Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai is that it's going to be kind of like for lack of a better term, like the Shawn Michaels Diesel type thing, where the like Raquel will turn babyface and end up feuding with Dakota Kai, who'll get too cocky or whatever. So I think that's the route they're going to go that way. But and like you said, babyfaces. The baby faces of Ember Moon and stuff match up better with Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. So I'll go on Shotzi and Ember Moon.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you as well. I gotta go Ember and Shotzi as well. Because
is there anyone feuding with Shayna and Nia right now?
No, they're kind of. They're still doing the kind of Lana stuff.
Yes, okay. So if they were feuding with someone who might take their titles away, I would say maybe they would do the old switcheroo and have them win and then go on to fight Raquel and Dakota. But I feel like Shotzi and Ember make a lot more sense as a credible contenders for the women's tag titles.
Yeah, and the thing is, well, I've gone off on this podcast a few times now about the women's tag titles and how just, like, I feel like they were obviously a thing when WWE brought them in. They were obviously, at the time, they had they had like 5 or 6 viable women's tag teams, and then for some reason they broke them all up, and now WWE is severely lacking in legitimate women's tag teams, and I feel like NXT is a place where, you know, those titles could go for a little, you know, recuperation almost, because I feel like there's a lot of women in NXT who haven't gotten a shot yet at, you know, being on TV and having a proper chance. So why not just, you know, form a few women's tag teams in the PC and, you know, have them come up on TV. I mean, obviously they live in a time you can't fit everyone in, I know that, but like just have them in to just slowly build a women's tag division in NXT, because like you're not going to do it on Raw and SmackDown, because we know the guys, we know who the wrestlers are on Raw and SmackDown. We know they're not in tag teams. Like why are Naomi and Lana a tag team now? You know what I mean? Just they're like all of a sudden they're a tag team because why? They both dance. I don't know. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. It feels like the women's tag titles were just, they were topical at the time because they had a lot of tag teams and people were calling for it. But then when they got them, WWE kind of went, all right, like, okay, it's there now. And they didn't put the effort and the time into it that it needs, like, to be successful, you know?
And I think like the fact that the NXT has enough wrestlers to make a women's Dusty Classic out of it, and enough legitimate teams, like, strengthens your argument as to why bringing those titles over to NXT would be a good idea, because there's a lot of legitimate teams there. But like you said, like the classic example is the Iconics, and why they randomly chose to split them up, I'll never know. When you're kind of struggling with a women's tag team division anyway. But
besides the Iconics, can we think of another like really united women's tag teams in WWE that had like I don't know, matching gear or an actual gimmick for their team, and really look more, and wasn't just two women's who like teamed together? So yeah, like Bailey and Sasha were a good tag team, but they were still like very very separate. Yeah. And their whole tag team run was just building towards their feud, so that's kind of
I think
maybe Stanya and Mandy, because they were brought up together as not Retribution.
Right,
what were they called?
No, it was Pages.
Yeah. Pages.
Pages.
Yeah,
right.
They were kind of, but again, they didn't dress similarly. They had a very distinctive. They both had distinctive looks. Obviously, they're both now singles competitors. Right. I suppose Jack said they're the Riot Squad. Maybe they came out together. Yeah.
At the time when they brought it out, they were doing when they brought it to titles, they were doing Tamina and Nia as a team. They had a team name as well. What was the
Samoan Slaughterhouse?
Something like that. But other than that, like the tag team division, like you said, Mike, Sasha and Bailey was just always going to build to a feud between them. They weren't like ever going to be a team like in long term. So for like them to bring out the tag titles when they had maybe 3 or 4 legitimate teams, and then decided to break up all those 4 teams, like the 4 teams we named there, bar the Riot Squad, are no longer teams, and the Riot Squad even at that were split up and put back together. So like we said, like it makes a lot of sense to bring those NXT titles or those tag team titles down to NXT, because there's a lot of teams there that can work, and have been a team for a long time as well.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. We'll move on to the men's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic final, and it is so the finals were set last night. It is MSK, formerly the Rascals, of course, Wesley and Nash Carter taking on the Grizzled Young Veterans, Zach Gibson and James Drake, in what should be a fantastic match, probably. So yeah, who you guys got and why?
Like go or
yeah, Jack,
go first this time. I'm gonna go to Grizzled Young Vets. I think it's just solely based off the kind of WWE trope where they bring teams in and give them a really, really good showing, but don't give them everything at the same time. Like prime example would be like the Rascals, or not the Rascals, the Radicals when they came in, and bringing them in and kind of have them fight from underneath straight off. And I think that's what we're going to see here with MSK, that they're going to come in and they're not going to be handed everything. And the Grizzly Young Vets are a good heel team to take their first loss for, because you can do things like kind of a cheap finish or a roll up or a DQ or whatever, and that's why I think the Grizzly Young Vets are established enough for them to win it too. So I'm gonna go to Grizzly Young Vets.
I think you're absolutely right about most of what you said, except I think that MSK are going to push through, and then they're going to come up short, just like you said, against Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch. Yep. I don't think they're going to just stop them there. I think they have a lot of stock in MSK because...
Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that. Like, I didn't mean to imply that they were going to be done with them then. I just think it's...
No. But I think they're going to push it and probably go to a feud versus Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch, because that would be very, very good. But also, I think they're bringing MSK fully TV ready. They've been doing great on Impact. They've proven themselves in that setting that they can have great matches, and I think they want to see more of that before cutting their momentum.
Yeah. I actually don't know about this one. This is probably my least clear one to call, because I can see them doing what you're saying, Mike, with MSK, overcoming Grizzly Young Veterans, and then going on to fall at the final hurdle for the tag titles, and also because there's heel NXT tag champions at the minute as well. But the other thing is Grizzly Young Veterans were finalists last year, and I don't know, would they have them lose 2 consecutive finals in a row? But I'm gonna go with where the momentum is lying at the minute, and go with MSK, because they're insanely popular right now at the minute. Like, they're every week on NXT. They nearly steal the show. Their matches are amazing. They're fantastic guys. It's, Wentz and Dez, they're just amazing wrestlers. So I reckon they'll put on a serious showing at Takeover. And I think every match on a Takeover could feasibly steal the card, but this one I think is going to be one people are going to be talking about. So yeah, we'll move on from that. Next match, it is the NXT North American Championship. It is NXT North American Champion Johnny Gargano defending his title against Kushida. Who do you have and why, Mike? Who do you have?
I'll go with Gargano. So part of me wishes it was Kushida, just because I enjoy his matches so much. I think what Johnny Gargano is doing with the way is great. It's a great storyline. It's captivating, and they seem to be really pushing that. And I feel like Kushida's gonna get screwed over somehow, and that's gonna cost him his title.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, actually. I think there's going to be some sort of a screwy finish. And I think Johnny Gargano will walk away with retaining the title. I'm really excited for this match, though, because these are 2 of my favorite wrestlers in NXT. And I think Kushida hasn't got the kind of fair shake that he should have gotten coming in straight away. And it's good now that they're using him in the way that he should have been all along right now. So I'm hoping it leads to kind of a trilogy, or at least a rematch in this. I don't think this is the end of the feud with them. And hopefully it leads to someday down the line Kushida picking up the North American title. But I don't think that's now. And I agree with what Mike said there. So yeah, I'm going to go Johnny Gargano.
Yeah. I'm going Gargano as well. Just because, I think the way is it's a fun little stable at the minute, and I think heel Gargano for the longest time wasn't clicking with me. Just because, he was so he was synonymous with being the face of NXT, the top baby face in NXT. Obviously, the feud with Ciampa and stuff, you know, it just elevated him to ultra sympathetic heights. And you know, it's kind of, it was very hard then when they turned it. And you know, it was fine at the start, but then it just got to he kind of did. It was a bit there where he floundered, and for me anyway. And now with the formation of the way, with the inclusion of Indy Hartwell and Austin Theory, I think he's finally hitting he's hitting the right notes as a heel. And yeah, I think there will be some sort of screwy finish here. I think Theory might interfere. Theory's kind of in a feud with Dexter Lumis as well at the minute, so Lumis might run in. It could lead to, say, maybe a triple threat or a fatal four-way down the line with all four guys. Maybe Theory takes the title, and then that leads to dissension in the way somehow. I don't know, because I actually think the best use of Kushida right now is he should be the guy to take the Cruiserweight title off Santos Escobar. Is how I would do it, because obviously Kushida, for the longest time, you know, he was the ace of the junior division in Japan. New Japan Kushida is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, and I think if you want to elevate a cruiserweight division, you put Kushida at the head of it. So, you know, yeah, I think Gargano takes the win here, and I reckon we do get a rematch down the line, but I reckon it'll involve Lumis and possibly Theory as well. Yeah, so moving on. Next match is a match I'm very excited for. It is the triple threat match for the NXT Women's Championship. It is NXT Women's Champion Io Shirai defending her title against Toni Storm and Mercedes Martinez. Who'd you have and why, Jack?
I'm gonna go Toni Storm. I think this is her time. It feels like it's her time, and Io has held the title long enough now that it seems like it could be time to take it off her. And with WrestleMania looming and stuff, they could be setting her up to go to either Raw or SmackDown after WrestleMania, like they do every year. So I could definitely see them changing the title here, and I definitely think it's Toni Storm's time right now. It feels so. I'm gonna go Toni Storm.
Billy, who have you got?
I'm going Io to retain. Because nothing against Mercedes Martinez and Toni Storm, both fantastic, but the woman who's going to take the title of Io Shirai is Xia Li. She is going to take the NXT Women's title, because I am 100% invested in this Tian Sha storyline, this 3,000-year-old evil empress who's controlling Boa and Xia Li. And Xia Li, since she repackaged herself, has been fantastic. And I think, done right, she should be the woman to take the title off her. I reckon this match is going to be incredible. 3 amazing women, but just no, it's got to be Xia Li down the line somewhere at probably the Mania takeover. If there is a Mania takeover, I'm not sure if there is, but if there, but yeah, no, I'm going on Io to retain, and then to lose it to Xia Li later on via Evil Empress.
So I'm 100% on board with everything about Xia Li. I think she's fantastic, and I'm very, very excited to see what they're going to do with her when she's having like longer matches, because those like short matches she's been having have been phenomenal and completely impressive. However, for the triple threat match, I will go with Mercedes Martinez. I think like it would be a wasted opportunity to not have her win this, because she's such a good dark horse. Because I think people who haven't seen her work prior to WWE or in the what was it called, the Mae Young Classic, which was like very small, like she's a great wrestler and she can do a lot and she can have great matches. And I think they're gonna surprise us with this one and go with her just because no one expects it, and she'll be a great champion for NXT.
Yeah, similar to how Io won the title
Right.
last year, sure, with Rhea and Charlotte. Like no one was expecting Io to, like Io was there to take the fall essentially, and then
Right.
of course she won the title.
Because if you're not a Japanese wrestling nerd, you wouldn't know how great of a wrestler and the kind of matches Io is capable of having.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely. And finally, we go to the main event. Again, just another match that could absolutely, steal the year. It is the NXT Championship match between NXT champion Finn Balor defending his title against Pete Dunne. Mike, who do you have in mind?
So I've got Finn Balor in for this because I think that they're in this for the long haul. Like I can't think of two people that are better suited to have like the best match possible than Pete Dunne and Finn Balor. And I think they're gonna do this one. Finn Balor's gonna win, but it's gonna be like an amazing match, and they're gonna show respect at the end, and then maybe something's gonna happen, and then they're gonna keep pushing this for a while, possibly until Mania, and have that be the Mania match because the Mania Takeover, if there is one, have that be the main there because it just makes sense, and to have them keep feuding until then, and to have an even bigger match just seems to make sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Balor as well. I think it's an interesting one. Like I could easily see him putting on Pete Dunne because Pete Dunne has been, one of their best competitors in the last 4 or 5 years. Ever since the UK tournament, he's kind of shone out of that kind of NXT UK scene, and it feels like he's deserving of this opportunity and even deserving of the title. But like Mike said, I think they're in it for the long haul with Balor. I see Karrion Kross as the guy taking the title off Balor because Balor was the guy who took the title when Karrion Kross left. So I'm very, very high on Karrion Kross, and I think he's the kind of future there, especially with the whole package with Scarlett. I think it's brilliant. So I'm intrigued to see that. I think if there is a Mania takeover, I think that's the match. Is going to be Kross and Balor. So I think Balor's picking up the win here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did put it on Dunne though.
Yeah, I'm going Balor as well, simply because, kind of for what you said, Jack, in the sense that I think Kross is looming in the wings. He, like, since he's come back, they've obviously been kind of waiting for the opportunity to put him back into the title scene. And obviously it didn't make 100%, sense for him to do it right now, because Balor was ingrained in this kind of feud with, the McAfee stable, I suppose. And yeah, I don't know, because I just have this feeling in my stomach that Karrion Kross will be getting a call up after Mania. That, like, he's just a guy that they're so high on, and he's a guy who, like, he looks like a Raw or SmackDown superstar. Like, he looks like he could be feuding with Roman Reigns and feuding with, Drew McIntyre. And, like, he's and with Scarlett as well, like you said, it's an incredible package. The entrance is such a spectacle, and
I think it's something that Vince McMahon would love as well. I think that's something Vince would love, that package with Scarlett. I think it's very up Vince's alley if he gets on board with it, and it's explained to him right. So I agree with you there that he could easily be called up at any time too.
Ideally, in an ideal situation, I would have Kross take the title off Balor Mania weekend, and then have Kross hold it till maybe the SummerSlam takeover, and then have Kyle O'Reilly take it off him, and have Kyle O'Reilly take over as the top face of NXT. But I don't know. I reckon for this match anyway, I think Finn's winning it. Just because I don't think it's Pete Dunne's time. Like, we know that he's fully capable of leading a promotion. We saw it in Progress. We saw it in NXT UK. But like, the thing about Pete Dunne, he's still 24 or something. He has plenty of time to win the NXT title. You know what I mean? So yeah, I reckon Finn retains. And the only thing I can't figure out with Finn though is when he goes back to the main roster, like what is he, or if he's ever going back to the main roster, like what's the story with him now? Like, when he drops the NXT title eventually, is he going back to Raw and SmackDown, or is he staying in NXT? I don't know. But yeah, I'm going Finn to retain here though.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The whole Balor thing with regards to him going back to Raw or SmackDown. I fully see him as an NXT guy now. I think he's quite happy to just be in NXT at the moment. because like he was up there, he got up to the main roster. Obviously, the injury after winning the title, it didn't it didn't fall his way, it didn't work out. And then they kind of did he did a little weird feud with Bray Wyatt and stuff like that. I think he's valued in NXT, and I think he's a guy that Triple H likes to have around in NXT as well. So if either of them, this is just my opinion, but if either of them have any say in it, I'd reckon he'll remain in NXT. But you never know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's NXT Takeover Vengeance Day this Sunday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. If you have nothing else to be doing, I suppose. If you're alone, if you're watching. But yeah, so yeah, that's it. Mike, been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
To have you on. Do you have anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm at Speedball Bailey on Twitter and Instagram. I'm just Speedball Bailey on Twitch, where I recently started streaming. Been watching loads of Canadian wrestling. I figured out how to have guests on Twitch, so I'm going to be speaking with a lot of very, very interesting people coming up soon, so check that out. But the most important thing you can do for me is to, if you haven't seen my matches, or if you have, go to YouTube, Speedball Mike Bailey, watch some of my stuff, and if you like it, then share it. Put it on your Facebook, tell your friends. If you see some wrestling that is cool and you think your friends will enjoy it, well then please tell them and share it, because as independent wrestlers, and anything independent, podcasting works the same way. We can't really advertise, that's expensive. Things like this and things like wrestling only grow because you spread the word, and we appreciate that, so thank you in advance. And yeah, those are my plugs.
Yeah, so what we'll do, Mike, is we'll actually put a few recommendations on our Twitter for matches of yourself. I know OTT have 2 full matches of you and Keith Lee, and one of you and Matt Riddle. So there are 2 matches I definitely recommend people go watch. So we'll put those up on our Twitter as soon as we get off here. And yeah, again, as Billy said, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. We'd love to have you back on at some stage. If we didn't scare you off this time, around.
Not at all. When wrestling's back, can I have some actual relevant things to plug? I'd love to be back.
Brilliant. We'll hold you to that, Mike. Thanks very much. And for us, you can follow us at JB Wrestling 1998 on Twitter. I got that right, didn't I?
Yeah,
I'm terrible. I'm terrible at doing the plugs. For any inquiries, email us at jbwrestling50 at gmail.com. Our Instagram is up and running now. It's at Just Because Wrestling on Instagram, and Just Because Wrestling on YouTube, and Just Because Wrestling on any podcasting platform you get your podcasts, and you'll be able to hear this and many other podcasts. Hours of content. So thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.